Peter Lipsky presents Portrait of an Artist as a Young Woman, featuring Margaret Severn's paintings and writing from 1914 to 19, done between the ages of 13 and 18. The letters are read by Chelsea Ewing.
Pendoylan, Ashley Road, Epsom, England. I have changed dancing teachers and now study with Edward Espinoza, ballet master of the Covent Garden Opera House. First he said I was rotten and could not go on the stage for 4 or 5 years. Then he said my shape was perfect, and I was absolutely built for dancing, and that I am a brainy kid, and that he would not mind if I went on the stage now if I let him know a week ahead so he could prepare me. I have been to Die Valkyrie here, and it was lovely. Soon I am going to see A Midsummer Night's Dream, which I shall enjoy very much. Much love, Margaret. July 1914, Feldafang, Germany. Oh, Mother, I am crying now. There was an orchestra in the dining room, and I wanted to dance so hard that I suddenly began to cry, and I barely got out of the dining room in time. Oh, I don't know what to do. I want to dance, and how can I dance here? I dare not go back to the dining room. I know I'll do something extraordinary if I hear any more music. I've been dying to hear some ever since we came here, and when I hear it, and I just have to sit still and eat, I nearly go crazy. Well, it's all right now. Though it's only 10 o'clock, a great deal has happened since I left off writing. I went back to the dining room, and as soon as dinner was over, Christian hurried me into my nightdress, in other words, my Rubens Roman costume, and I went and began dancing on the lawn. There is an enormous one, with trees for background and a big round flower bed for foreground. Well, when I began there were about 30 people. There were about 200 when I finished. Christian says so. I never danced better in my life, and the music lasted at least a quarter of an hour. Christian says so. And I danced all the time. In the middle I got tired. Then I woke up and danced better than to begin with. So my toes worked all right, and I twiddled all in and out of the pillars without stopping once. They cleared the dining room of chairs and tables for me. There was a fine floor, but it was nicest on the lawn. Lots of love. Good night, me. August 1914. I am waiting for Christian to give me my German lesson. Meanwhile, I will write to you. Do you know anything about the war? Serbia and Austria are having a squabble about something or other, and it looks as if it might be serious. Well, I danced last night, but there weren't as many people as before, because on account of the war, they are all leaving. There were several Austrians in the hotel, but they all had to leave at 6 a.m. yesterday. There are lots of soldiers around here now.
Upon our return to Epsom, near London, we were surprised to find that 4 young men who were being mobilized for military training had been billeted in our house. They soon left for the front, and another group was moved in. I remember riding my horse proudly at the head of the marching columns, singing Tipperary at the top of my voice. I think I was a little in love with all of them, and recall one in particular, a poet whom I especially liked. At twilight on the evening before they were due to depart, I saw him standing disconsolately alone at the gate of the picket fence which surrounded Pendoylan. My big collie Bob sat beside him, looking up with sympathetic eyes, and nearby bloomed some enormous red poppies, accompanied by little steel blue cornflowers. I went to bid him farewell, having already heard tales of the trenches in Flanders filled with mud, rats, and lice, and enlivened by the bursting of bombs. I knew that he was going for a rendezvous with death, but we did not speak of such things. Instead, he kissed me goodbye, lightly and tenderly, and a large piece of my childish affection went with him to the war. Back in America, We occupied a house overlooking the Hudson River, and 4 times a week I took a train into New York City for ballet classes with Luigi Albertieri, an Italian of fiery disposition. Formerly ballet master with the Metropolitan Opera, he was a pupil of Enrico Cicchetti, who sometimes honored our class with his presence when on tour with the company of Anna Pavlova. He even came to see us occasionally after Albertieri had moved his studio to East 59th Street, and Pavlova was the only dancer of whom he spoke no ill. But he could not resist putting his hand to his mouth and whispering just the same, "You think she can do what I teach in my class? Oh, no." And here he winked and wagged his forefinger back and forth in front of his nose with an air which made it clear that Pavlova would be a mere novice in his strenuous class. Everybody came to the same lesson to sink or swim as best they could, according to their individual ability. And the great advantage of this was that beginners always had before their eyes an example in the most advanced dancers of how the steps should be executed, which was a great inspiration and a lesson in itself. For many years, Albertieri played the fiddle while we danced. He also had a big stick with which to thump out the rhythm on the floor, and occasionally on an offending knee or instep. He never praised our efforts, and a step too poorly executed brought forth wild discords on the faithful violin, up to a certain point, after which he would grab a chair and throw it at the unfortunate pupil. "If I no teacher you to dance, Jesus Christ no teacher you to dance." One of his favorite remarks when a hapless pupil failed to do an arabesque properly was, "You look like a little dog at a hydrant." As for children, he called them goddamn mosquitoes. But in spite of all his raging, they loved him just the same. When he wanted us to jump high, he would point to the ceiling and cry, "Go up there," and we would try to fly. Or when we faltered in our pirouettes, he would yell, "Stand up inside yourself. Go on, go on." Many a time in later years, when I was in a state of exhaustion, performing a series of pirouettes, I would imagine him standing on the stage in front of me, yelling, "Go on, go on." And so I took strength and went on and on, endlessly. Albertieri, with his interminable stump of an evil-smelling cigar and his fiddle, lives now only in the memories of those who loved him. Although he had not danced for years, when he wanted to put a pupil to shame, he would leap into the air with the agility and lightness of a cat. With no hint of effeminacy, he had a grace of movement that left one breathless. He lived in the glorious past of Italian opera houses and could not endure the cold, dull present. I believe it was his own bitterness and hatred that eventually killed him in 1930.
April 1916, Tarrytown, New York. Darling Mother, I just have to tell you how wonderful this afternoon's performance was. Nijinsky, oh, he was wonderful. When he danced the rose, I cried and trembled like a leaf out of pure joy and excitement. Oh, to dance with him, heavens! He seems to be much better and bigger than he was in London. He inspired Lopakova. He inspired the whole company. The great personality needed in the company was there. Nijinsky did Petrushka differently, but no better than Messine. Oh, I am just mad, wild, crazy to see him, and wish Mr. Dabot would bring back to meet me. Oh, Mother, Nijinsky was wonderful, wonderful. He got much applause and many flowers. The whole ballet did beautifully today. The sunset is beautiful. I think I will have to paint another picture tonight. I've already done 3 since you left. One of them is most evidently directly inspired by the ballet. It's perfectly awful to know that Nijinsky is in the city and I can't know him. Albie says he isn't interested in Nijinsky's, says Cicchetti has told him what Nijinsky is, and that is enough. Isn't he a pig? Awful pig? Oh, Mother, I am just crazy about Nijinsky. I want to dance so much with him. I think I must be in love. I know I love him, but I don't know whether I'm in love or not. In any case, I don't see as it does me any good, one way or the other. Juliet's romance seems very dull. Oh, say, shall I dance for Diaghilev when you come back? Oh, heavens.
In June of 1916, I was engaged as premiere danseuse for a Metropolitan Opera Company performance of Aida in Philadelphia, which was arranged by Alberturi, who was their ballet master. Although I did receive good notices, it seemed like a disaster to me. There had been no stage rehearsal for the ballet, and I stood nervously in the wings until Alberturi yelled, "Go on!" Dashing onto the stage, I found myself completely lost in a throng of extras, mostly soldiers with huge shields and spears, who formed a semicircle between me and the footlights, which it seemed I would never be able to penetrate. But, hearing my music, I barged wildly through the barricade of soldiers' legs and managed to get to the front of the stage, fortunately, before the piece was entirely over. Very funny. That summer, Mother decided it was time for me to learn more about actual theatrical performance, costumes, etc. So we took off for Los Angeles, where I could study at the newly founded Denishon School under Ruth St. Denis and Ted Shawn. Among the students was a 22-year-old beginner named Martha Graham. In addition to dance, the curriculum included fabric dyeing and other crafts. I was rather contemptuous of Mr. Shawn, who informed me that the art of ballet was dead, but I much enjoyed working with Miss Ruth, as she was called. St. Denis was a consummate artist and fine dancer who had her own technique, which was characterized by exquisite line, fine imagery, warm feeling, and great musicality. She was also extremely clever in helping pupils find an expression which suited their own nature and could be at the same time a saleable dance. In her autobiography, Ruth St. Denis wrote,
"Sometime during this first year, a long-legged youngster was brought by her mother. This little girl, I saw at once, had an almost mature sensitivity to certain values of the dance, though she was still on the edge of childhood. She was Margaret Severn, who seemed the embodiment of qualities which I yearned to communicate to the youngsters in my class. Her future career attested to that rare temperament and beauty that was in her."
In July and August, the 100-member company staged a dance pageant of Egypt, Greece, and India at the Greek Theater in Berkeley and at the Panama, California International Exposition in San Diego. I was a dancer with triangle in the Egypt section and priestess of Bacchus in Greece. The San Francisco Chronicle remarked,
"Child dancer delightful. 14-year-old Margaret Severn of New York was a delightful little personality with inspired toes. She danced herself into the hearts of the great multitude of people that crowded into the theater in her first dance and took her place there permanently before the end of the performance."
During class at Alberturi's one day, I heard some girls remark that there was to be an audition for a cabaret show at Brighton Beach Hotel. The producer was Madame Sherry, an extremely chic French woman who always wore a stovepipe hat at least 18 inches tall, ringed round with feathers. I went and announced that I was the best dancer in America. She said, "Show us." So I danced, and she said, "Yes, you are. We will give you $35 a week, and you will do 3 dances and stage all the numbers in the review." I accepted.
June 1917. Oh heavens, Brighton Beach. Well, to begin with, the journey is absolutely impossible. It took me an hour and a half and nearly killed me, and the last trains at night would certainly be full of toughs and terribly crowded. The place is barren, hot, and no shade. The hotel was not in order, enough for me to tell anything about it. But the room where we will perform is not as large as where we rehearse, and there are posts in it. The floor is all right at present, but doubtless will be waxed. The hotel is a big yellow barn in a sort of amusement park, and you have to pay 5 cents to enter the grounds. It is not 75 feet from the ocean. I felt terribly discouraged today, and between swearing, decided that this is a rotten world, and that I'd quit being a dancer anyhow. If I only do as simple a dance as I am planning, I can make one pair of shoes last a week. I had to make up my Egyptian dance on the spot today, and Madame made some entirely unwanted criticisms on the arms in turns, and I squelched her. Then, later, she said it was all right. I don't know why I couldn't sleep last night. I don't feel like sleeping tonight either. I feel miserable. I got terribly tired today. I am getting an awful temper. Today somebody made a suggestion for my dance, and I nearly threw the piano at them. And then poor Jack said he wouldn't like too much ballet stuff in it, and I nearly put him out the window. Oh, damn, damn. If I swear too much, this letter will become as bad as my diary. I hate Brighton, and the show and the dressing, and getting drenched, and mad, and hot, and perspiring, and the world in general, and I wish I were dead. With this pleasant news, I bid you adieu, Margaret. Down, 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 down.
The show went on and seemed to be a big success for 3 weeks. Then a closing notice was posted with instructions for the cast to collect their final week's salary at the office in New York. I overheard the more seasoned performers saying among themselves that probably we would never get our money. I didn't care for this at all, and had the bright idea to take possession of one of the costumes, a short white tutu with an all-rhinestone bodice, and hold it as collateral. But the management had tied all the costumes up in a big white sheet protected by a high picket barricade. Not to be defeated, I climbed the fence later that night, extracted my costume, and carried it at my side in a small bag. In the morning, I confronted the formidable Madame Chevy in the hotel lobby. I told her I had the dress and would return it upon receipt of my salary. She flew into a fit, cursed and spat in my face, and screamed that she would have me put in jail. A large crowd gathered around us. Shelley continued to screech, and the whole scene was quite frantic, but it never occurred to me to surrender. Just at this moment, a man pushed his way through the crowd. He happened to be a person who had met my mother, and after I explained to him the cause of the excitement, he addressed himself to the hotel management and told them that if I were not paid, he would make real trouble for them. So they quickly complied, and as soon as I got my precious $35, I dramatically opened the little handbag, tossed the costume to Madame Shelley, and departed in glory. During the next year, through a manager, I was back at Brighton Beach for a short engagement, then transferred to Reisenweber's in New York, where I seemed to become a permanent fixture at 7 and 11 every night. Reisenweber's was located close to Columbus Circle, with a large family restaurant on the main floor, a smarter restaurant on the second floor, and above this the more exclusive Paradise Room, where I had to perform occasionally between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. There were 2 Mr. Schultzes at Reisenweber's. One, known as Front Schultz, was plump, wore new clothes, and had shiny black hair with mustache to match. I suppose he was the general manager of the establishment, and the other, called Back Schultz, acted as stage manager for the show. He was a middle-aged chap, slightly shabby, with grizzled hair, and he was a wonderful friend to me. He guarded my entrances and exits into the crowded dining room, told me whether my makeup was good or bad, what sort of audience I might expect to find, and warned me about broken glass on the floor. When I complained about the glass to Front Schultz, he was quite annoyed and said testily, "That's your problem, girlie." So I instructed my feet never to step on any glass, and they never did. Back Schultz always watched my performance closely, and was the only one who seemed to have the faintest inkling of the beauty I sought to create with my work. I remember that he was particularly protective on Armistice Night, when the restaurant was overflowing with a wildly exultant mob celebrating the end of World War I.
November 12, 1918, New York. Isn't the news marvelous? But my heavens, what a queer way people have of celebrating. They went absolutely mad here. Last night and yesterday the streets were jammed, and everybody drunk, and some very drunk. They were tooting and cheering and singing and yelling and dancing and fighting. Of course, Reisenweber's was a perfect riot. It was packed tight in every room, and had its share of brawls and fights, as well as laughter and singing. All the performers were drunk but me, and there was not a person in the audience who was not blurry-eyed. And what a racket! On Broadway, the sailors and soldiers were madly kissing every girl that passed their way, while mounting police struggled in vain to keep order. Traveling was almost impossible, as the subway was jammed, the buses were crowded, streetcars were scarce and slow, and Fifth Avenue could not be crossed by motor except at long intervals. Intermixed with the heavy traffic were parading boys and men, and bands and trucks filled with noisemakers. But during it all, I met with no disagreeable experiences, which is quite remarkable, as I was in the midst of much of it. August 1919, New York. I have to report for our first rehearsal of Love for Sale tomorrow at 10. I am to do 2 dances. One is the Spirit of Fortune, a dream fantasy. I am a wicked vampire symbolizing speculation. It takes place on Wall Street. The stockbroker dances with me in acrobatic style. It is a very wild dance, but I calmly kill the gentleman in the end. Why do they always pick on me to vamp? In the other dance, I pose as a statue in the center of a marble fountain with real water gushing around. The chorus girls are on the stage dressed as swans. I come to life, dance on my toes, and return to the fountain. Later, I drive all the swans off stage with long white ribbon reins. I wear costumes in 2 other numbers, but do not dance in them. October 1919, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. It would take 3 books to explain all the things that have happened. To begin with, this hotel is the dirtiest, worst place I was ever in. I share a bath with 4 other girls and go and come with them. If I ventured forth alone at night, I would probably be kidnapped, as we are in a terrible neighborhood. We are constantly insulted, even when together. The opening of the show was terrible. The scenery is unfinished, and all is in the most frightful confusion imaginable. My dances are both an immense success, however. At the matinee, a small audience continued to applaud me after Kitty Gorey started to sing. I feared trouble. I have scarcely slept for 4 days, had poor food at long intervals, and most tiring journeys, waits, rehearsals, and wild and ferocious fights in which I hung on to my points like a bulldog at the throat of a man, have been struck by a heavy falling pole, worked in fitless costumes, etc., etc., and never once lost my head for an instant. After our fight and after I danced, both Andre and Sherry came and kissed me and said I had improved so much and was the most wonderful dancer they ever saw, even if I was a damn nasty little girl.
One day, members of the company were asked to appear in a program of entertainment for the residents of a military hospital on Long Island. Standing in the wings of a small stage, I heard the opening bars of my music and dashed merrily out to entertain the men. As I looked at the audience, my blood froze, and for a fraction of a second, I seemed incapable of moving. I felt I had no legs. But then, automatically, I started to perform the steps of the dance. On the floor in front of the stage lay many rows of baskets, each one containing the remnants of a man. All were legless, many armless as well. The faces were mostly blank, with expressionless eyes staring straight before them. We, the entertainers, had been given no hint of what to expect, and the shock was ghastly. My strongest feeling was that I had no right to possess a pair of legs. I was ashamed to have legs. I wanted to savagely cut them off. To step on a pointed toe to perform these meaningless steps seemed simply impossible, or at least sacrilegious. At the conclusion of the dance, there was, of course, no applause, only the inert torsos, the hopeless staring eyes. The sensation of paralysis in my own body had been appalling, but halfway through the dance, I managed to convince myself that instead of taking on the condition of these irrevocably damaged human beings, my job was to transmit to them, as much as possible, all the joy and beauty of my young, strong life. So I tried to dance at my very best, to give them all my love. Later, I was able to talk and joke with some of the less severely injured soldiers. But the ghastly pain and despair I saw there will remain forever in a corner of my psyche.